My guest today is Maryna Kozhedub, who started her humanitarian career as a volunteer for the Ukrainian Red Cross and is also a member of the IFRC Youth Commission. Maryna, welcome to People in the Red Vest podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So you're a volunteer with the Ukrainian Red Cross and a member of the Youth Commission of the IFRC. On the Youth Commission, you represent the interests of young people. One of the critiques that we often hear from young leaders is that young volunteers often do a lot of the heavy lifting in the humanitarian work we do. For example, like you said, they're the ambassadors, they deliver the messages, but also aid packages, first aid are on the ground. However, they are less often given the chance to be involved in decision making. What do you think? Is there some truth in that?
Oh, there's always some truth in that, if it's said. But about how heavy lifting. I believe that some volunteers, some people, they consciously come to us because they want to do heavy lifting. They want to come to do stuff, they want to see the result, and it would satisfy them. And it's important to remember that many volunteers want this, and we should not put this volunteers say, no, you should want to be in decision making. Maybe not everyone need it at all. However, indeed, sometimes our decision making system is not fully inclusive and not very flexible to really hear the voice of all young people and not always give an opportunity to everyone who even would like them. And it's actually our role as Youth Commission to provide this, promote these changes. And it's actually what we're doing with the constitutional changes we advocated for, with update of youth engagement strategy, and with youth network toolbox development and network meeting we run on a regular basis. So yeah, this problem remains. But I would say that, some volunteers, they come to see fast result, and it's okay.
Speaking of heavy lifting, people often refer to volunteers as heroes. What do you think of this kind of narrative around volunteering?
I think it's very toxic narrative. And I think the toxicity of this narrative lie down in the etymology of the word hero. Because from ancient Greek, hero means like demigod. I don't know any young people or volunteer who would call them, I'm a demigod, I come to help my community. I never see it. And honestly, I'm a bit sad when we promote, and we do sometimes. If we Google Red Cross hero, Red Cross volunteers, we would see a lot of articles, publication, even posters when we see hero, Superman written, I'm Red Cross. And it could be okay in a peaceful time. But when it's emergency, people actually expect from hero or so-called demigod, like demigod actions and hero actions, sometimes that are beyond human capacity. And this pressure very, very often endanger our volunteers who already operate in dangerous situation. And we should be very careful how we communicate with that. And I'm personally absolutely against hero narratives. I'm about narratives that our volunteers, they work hard, but they are human who have needs, who should be protected and cared too. Because this pressure is enormous for any person. And I have a personal example in this regard. I'm from Ukraine and I'm Ukrainian Red Cross volunteer. However, I do not volunteer for emergency response. My volunteer mostly lie down with the youth representation, humanitarian education program. I'm there via BC trainer, so on and so on. And I don't really know how properly evacuate people. I'm not aware about the security protocol when you work on the missiles attack. So I'm not educated for this. And when war escalated, I was in Kiev at the time, and I start to receive enormous number of messages. Maryna, we know you are from Red Cross. Can you go to occupied territory and rescue my relatives? And I was scared myself. I was in the middle of beginning of huge war. And I receiving messages and demand to risk my life to help other people because people knew I belonged to Red Cross. Of course, people were emotional. It's an extreme situation. You would tell anyone, you would scream for help. And I was also in the same situation, but I start to understand how might people feel in this situation and how might people who work, especially in emergency, who trying to do this feel. It's huge. It's a huge expectation and pressure. And here we should communicate differently.
Are there other pressures that you think young people have that may not be so obvious to older humanitarians?
Of course, we all have pressure. World changing so much, and I guess in comparison for previous generation, my generation and younger generation, we live in much more uncertain worlds, much more uncertainty. And if you speak about European region, for example, which I'm more aware of, like I knew that like my parents, my grandparents, they were able to buy apartment. Speaking of myself, I'm not sure how soon I would be able to buy apartment, because the opportunity not there and not so much as before. And it's of course give you some uncertainty and security, but at the same time our values are differently. We invest in different things. And I guess this is something as a gap in communication with older generation who grow up in different time when they were more stable, when they could plan to work on one position during all their life and it was accepted in the society. Now situation is different and it's pressure. It's pressure if you work in one organization too long. It's pressure if you change organization too often. And so on labor market, on economy, of uncertainty, and if you look for a geopolitical landscape, it's quite scary, especially for young people to understand what their future will be. And this uncertainty influence health, mental health, and I guess that's one of the biggest pressure young people facing today.
So it seems that in many ways, young people have more power to influence culture than ever before, or at least more quickly, through primarily social media. Does this give young people more power to set the agenda?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. But also it's imposed a lot of risk. But if speaking about empowering, I would say a lot, and we saw many great advocacy campaigns that were made online, made sitting home with your computer, doing TikTok, doing Instagram posts, Facebook posts, putting hashtags, and push even high-level decision-maker to do changes. We saw it everywhere, and now with many campaigns going on online from different organizations, different network, and every single person have opportunity to do something, to create narrative, put it online, make a global discourse, and finally change things. So definitely yes. At the same time, a lot of propaganda, a lot of misuse of information, and for our volunteers, especially who work in conflict zone or in zone of natural disaster, it's imposes extra risk because anyone can put anything on internet. For example, one angry beneficiaries might write bad post about our organization, and it could get mainstream because it was or record TikTok. It could be very fast sharing, and then our volunteer might be in question or in danger. So this is another side of medal that anyone can put any information, and it's not very well verified on facts.
So let's talk more about social media. How is that impacting volunteers on the ground, working at community level? Do you think social media is helping or hindering their work? Or is there a happy medium?
As everywhere. Two sides as everywhere, of course, depending how we use. But I personally like social media and new tools because it does help us to reach new people. It does help us to express differently idea, its creativity, and it helps in many ways. And many platforms to communicate online help us to connect, to world become more global, globalization going on much faster with development of different platform for social interaction online. At the same time, if we're speaking about the danger, I guess it's like also in our unique mission and in Geneva Convention and emblema use. And here is something we should be aware, especially for young people who live in turbulent time, and we see many conflicts right now around the globe. And this is a sensitive part. For example, also people unaware about complexity of our movement, because on one hand social media provide a platform to quickly communicate TikTok, 10 minutes, you got the idea. Oh, 10 minutes, sorry, 5 seconds, which 10 minutes? 5 seconds, you got the idea. But how you got the idea about the complexity of Red Crescent movement in 5 seconds? How can you got the idea of Geneva Convention? How can you get the idea how ICRC navigate discussion on war prisoners? It's impossible. It's impossible to get in 5 seconds. It's a years of studies. And sometimes people get angry if they don't see actions they would expect from Red Cross, any of our actor, and they make a 5-second TikTok saying they don't do nothing, and it's become viral. And then other volunteers affected, as they might not even know why people think they don't do nothing, and the specific volunteer could work really a lot, sacrifice personal life, endanger herself or himself, and then receive TikTok, Red Cross, you do nothing. Of course, it's sad, and it's some volunteers leaving our organization because of this social media pressure, of this social pressure. So this is the risk, and I'm not very happy to seeing some video like that, especially in emergency context, where of course people said, of course it's understandable why they do this, but at the same time, for life of other volunteers, sometimes it's a huge risk.
Social media has changed the way we do and perceive everything, really, right? So what do you think volunteering will look like in 20 or 30 years?
Obviously would be more digital volunteering, and COVID embraces these changes very fast and show us all how we might look like in 10 years perspective without pandemic stuff, but pandemic happened, and now we much closer to more opportunity for digital volunteering and also online interaction. I guess a new generation might even embrace some virtual reality volunteering, which actually become a case already in educational programs and awareness raising. So this is the thing, and I want to believe volunteering would be more popular. I want to believe people would like to seek a new community, new network.
And in more general terms, how do you see the future as a young person, as a young woman? Are you hopeful?
What else do we have as not to hope? I try to be hopeful. To be honest, it's not easy to be hopeful when you have friends who died during the war. It's not easy to be hopeful when you have people all around the globe who face different challenges. However, at the same time, it teaches you to be hopeful. It teaches you to enjoy small moments. It teaches you to value something simple, like walking with coffee under a peaceful sky. This is important. And I believe for our generation and for young people, it's more common to enjoy simple things and try to be more grounded and try to enjoy what you have now in this second.
Well, first of all, I'll say I'm very sorry if you have lost close loved ones and friends during the war in Ukraine. And thank you for being so hopeful and positive about the future. I agree with you. I think that's what we need, despite everything, right? We have to move on and carry on with whatever it is that's, despite all odds and with everything that's thrown at us. And now, can we go back a little bit? I think you started volunteering almost or more than 10 years ago now. What was that like? Was volunteering a thing that people did in Ukraine at the time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I joined, I guess in 2012, 13. So it was a bit different context of volunteering. And the general fact is that the culture of volunteering and social responsibility, feeling of social responsibility, mirroring general political situation in country and general geopolitical situation. And situation before 2015 in Ukraine was different. And when I joined volunteering, my friends say, "What is that volunteering? What are you doing? What are you some like person from another planet?" And I joined volunteering because at the time I studied in pedagogical college, and Red Cross implemented an educational campaign to promote health lifestyle and anti-HIV prevention and other disease prevention. And as a teacher to become at that point, I wanted, I want to join this program. It's cool. We can on behalf of Red Cross go to another students, to another children, and tell them about really important issues like a health, like HIV pandemic, etc., etc. So I was very glad too. Of course, I had my motivation mostly like related to professional development, but soon I understand, wow, but Red Cross is unique, it's huge. It was not so many volunteers of Red Cross at that time in Ukraine because there was not so much need, it was not so much promoted. However, this network and organization opened my eyes that it's so global, that it's so unique. And when 2014 happened with Euromaidan revolution and occupation of territories, of course, society changed. There was significant shift in mindset of people, and mostly every second person start to volunteer. And if we speak about now, that everyone volunteering for one or another organization or by themselves, because it's existential for country, it's existential for context. So volunteering is existential for society to grow, to strive, and it's the biggest, not the biggest insight I get, but it's something I get with this like after 2014. Before it was more fun network, but after that I start clearly see how our action influence general situation on social cohesion, social development, and country development.
Can we talk about what you are doing currently, right now? I think you are based in Brussels, right? But you still volunteer for the Ukrainian Red Cross remotely. So what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I do based in Brussels and I work here and I volunteer for Red Cross. First of all, for last like 5-6 years, I volunteered for them like a youth delegate. Now I'm not officially youth delegate, but I support and mentor other youth delegates and young volunteers, especially those who interested in international cooperation, development, international projects. But my main focus now, of course, it's a Youth Commission, and with Youth Commission I am leading a task force for youth network development because I am a big fan and big believer in youth network, and I think it's a crucial. So if you're speaking about practical example of my action, so in a team in team with other great young people, we developed a manual that helped to develop youth network. Okay, youth network is many repetition of youth network, but indeed have to build the network, have to improve connection between one national society to another national society. We also collected different great example of cross-national society youth cooperation, and it's something I'm strongly advocate for, and it's one of my leading role in this. And another role I took and put on myself is to promote narrative of youth in conflict and emergency, because it's very close topic to me. I have many friends and who operate in emergency. My country in Warsaw, of course, I understand the pain, I understand the reality, and it's something I want to put in the head of a decision maker on high level of IFRC, and also through different platforms, through different strategies. Basically, I always, if I have a chance to proofread any document, I always add something. Please don't forget to mention this, because although our work might seem a bit bureaucratic, we know that at the end of the day it would end up in action in the field. And if you don't put important statement, or if you don't advocate for specific project or narrative, it would not, it might come at some point, but it would be faster. It's our job to make sure that the people who need to be heard, they are heard. And I know that probably not all people who work in conflict and emergency have direct access for decision maker to tell about their struggles. So I'm this link, I'm bridge, and I try to talk with people who work in the field facing real difficulties, and to the people who make a decision sitting in high building. So that's it.
We always ask our guests to bring an object that has some personal meaning to them. Can you tell us what you brought and why it has a special meaning for you? And if you can show it to the camera, that'd be great.
Yes, right. Yeah, I do have object. It's not fresh, but I have a small Dumbledore from Harry Potter story, because it's one of my favorite personages. And I really like his phrase that the happiness could be found in the most darkest time. Just don't forget to turn on light. And this for me about life, this for me about purposes of why I'm volunteering, why I'm living. And it's a reality not always the brightest. Sometimes it's very dark, but it's always a light, and light start with you. And that's why this object like very good, and it's on my key, so every time I open door I remind myself to open light and turn on light. It's quite reflective.
So we already talked about hope, but I still want to ask you, at the end of the day, with everything that's going on in Ukraine, in the world, who or what inspires you, brings you that comfort or hope besides the little Dumbledore?
Right, besides the little Dumbledore, the people with their little action, but people who repeat their action, people who doing despite everything. I don't, to be honest, when I ask like who you admire, of course there are many great speakers, there are many great influence who you can admire, and I admire these people. But the most precious for me are the people in community who do something, but who doing on a daily basis, who love what they do and who believe it what they do. This inspires me the most, because it's very easy to get sad, depressed, and not to do something. But when you do every day one step to make this world better, that's that's everything what's matter. And these people inspire me, and I'm happy to know many people like that within our movement.
Speaking of the movement, the name of the podcast is People in the Red Vest. What does the red vest mean to you?
Red, I would say it's hope. It's hope, it's passion. It's about living despite everything. It's life. Red is life for me. I have a red nail to also cheers me up. You know, it's work very good on mental health. Red color sometimes, and I guess Red Cross is also it's about hope. It's about seeing light, but seeing this light that's living life. It's about heart on the red vest.
Thank you, Maryna, for sharing your expertise and insights with our audience and allowing us to get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk. Thank you so much, and I wish you a nice day.